constitute accumulated interest and the penalties from delayed payments, and the delay, what occasioned the delay in settling those bills that are due for payment by the two government entities. And then the Senator for Nairobi County, Senator Edwin Sifuna, will seek a statement from the CS for Treasury and Economic Planning on the failure by eCitizen digital platform to process and reflect payments made to some institutions such as NHIF. And could the CS also explain the steps taken to remedy the situation? And the senator wants to know where the convenience fee charged and all other payments that fail to reflect on the platform end up. And then the Senator for Kirinyaga County, James Morango, will ask the CS for Gender, Culture, and Arts and Heritage on the plans by the government to establish a public library in Kirinyaga County, and also the actions that our government is taking to ensure establishment of public libraries in all counties where there is none. And I believe this is a follow-up to the unbundling of the libraries function that has been ongoing to all the counties. And then still on today, there will be a notice of motion, and these notices are two. That is a report of the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement. And this will be requesting the Senate to adopt the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement that was laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 5th March of 2024, pursuant to Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and the Senate Standing Order 1868 of the Senate to approve that budget policy statement. And also there will also be a notice of motion seeking renewal of the mandate of the ANDOC Committee on the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi. And they will be seeking that the mandate be expanded, or rather to renew that mandate for a further term until June 19th of 2024 to enable it to complete the task that it was set up to do. And on the key agenda for today, that is the notice of motion on the budget policy statement. You can see, let's confirm whether there is quorum.
Honorable Senator, whose child is that? Clerk, can you proceed to call the first order? Honorable Kalwale, please just approach the chair as the clerk does that.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. Majority, can you proceed if you have instructions to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apologies on behalf of the Chair of Finance and the whole committee. We have been in session from 7 in the morning. We've just ended. I therefore rise, Mr. Speaker, to give notice of the following motion, namely a report of the Standing Committee on the Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the 2024 Budget Policy Statement laid on the table of this Senate on Tuesday, the 5th March 2024, and pursuant to Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order number 186-8, the Senate approves the 2024 Budget Policy Statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chairperson, ADO Committee, on the compensation to the Kenya victims of the 1998 bombing. Senator Kavindu or any member of that committee may proceed to give notice.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that at the sitting of the Senate held on 29th June 2023, the Senate resolves to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi and report back to the House within 3 months of the establishment. Further aware that on 3rd October 2023 and on 15th November 2023, the Senate resolved to review the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period not exceeding 45 days and a further period not exceeding 100 days from 10th November 2023, respectively, to establish the committee to finalize, to enable the committee to finalize and table its report in the Senate on or before 18th February 2024. Appreciating that the committee has a lot of work to execute before conclusion of its expiry and reporting to the Senate. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves to renew the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period not exceeding 100 days from 11th March 2024 and to table its final report in the Senate on or before 19th June 2024.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
No, honorable senators, we had scheduled 7 questions for response by 3 CSs today, this morning. That is CS Transport, CS Treasury, and CS Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. However, at a sitting yesterday of the SBC, we did consider 2 letters, one from the CS Treasury and one from the CS Transport, indicating that they will not be able to be present today for purposes of responding to their queries. And the reasons they gave were found to be valid by SBC, and therefore those questions relating to the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Treasury will be rescheduled to a later date. Now, this morning, of course, that then leaves us with the CS Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. Now, this morning I received a letter signed by the Honorable CS Aisha Jumwa, indicating that due to conflicting schedule, she will not be able to attend this session for purposes of responding to the question relating to her ministry. Therefore, honorable senators, we do not have a CS this morning to respond to these questions. The question time, therefore, naturally collapses, and we shall move to transact other business or other businesses as scheduled in the order paper. Yes, Honorable Kathuri.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that communication, which I'm not contesting. But Honorable Speaker, you know this is a house which has a lot of work to do. And Mr. Speaker, when scheduling this business, there is a lot of considerations that is done, especially at the SBC, Senate Business Committee. So, Mr. Speaker, when our CS postpones appearing before the House this very morning, when we have scheduled business already, to me, Mr. Speaker, I think if we go that route, then we'll be disrespecting this Honorable House. So, Mr. Speaker, there must be some time frame that the CS at least should communicate. And also the reason that the CS is giving that is a conflicting schedule of activities that she has is not good enough. Mr. Speaker, unless that schedule has been affected by the end of state, then that we can consider. But if it is our own programs, Honorable Speaker, I think we should really not go that route, and this House should not be very comfortable when the CS suspends or communicates in the very morning that he or she is supposed to appear before the Senate, and then we take that matter lying down, Mr. Speaker. This House must be respected. And Mr. Speaker, if we continue allowing this kind of business or this kind of manner, then, Mr. Speaker, nobody will ever respect this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, with a lot of pain that Honorable Senators woke up very early in the morning to beat the traffic, especially this Gong Road Honorable Senator for Nairobi. You should really raise that matter because, you know, most of us live in your county, but we are really struggling to get in the morning. Those are the matters that really need to be discussed. So, Mr. Speaker, we sacrifice a lot, even our schedules, our other programs, so that we can be in this House as hard as possible to wait for the Honorable CSEs. But when they frustrate us after doing all this sacrifice, Mr. Speaker, I think this is not honorable enough. I know the CS loans communicated early enough. The CS, which is the other CS? Treasury, National Treasury. During the communication, maybe before yesterday. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we, personally, as a member for Meru County, Senator for Meru County, not the Deputy Speaker, so that I don't conflict myself or the office. I'm talking as the Senator for Meru County. I think this CSA should do better than that, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Sifuna.
Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa nimekinoa Kiswahili changu kwa ajili ya ujio wa Waziri Aisha Jumwa ili tuweze kupatana moja kwa moja. Kwa hivyo utaniruhusu nizungumze Kiswahili hicho ili kisiende bure, hata kama hajafika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza nimjulishe ndugu yangu seneta wa Meru kwamba nimefanya kikao pamoja na mwenyekiti wa kamati ya usafiri Mheshimiwa Karungo Wathangwa na yule ambaye ni balozi wa nchi ya Japan kuhusu shida za trafiki katika barabara ya Ngong Road, na ametuahidi kwamba serikali ya Japan kupitia ushirikiano na serikali ya Kenya itazindua mfumo wa mabasi ya kasi katika barabara hiyo ya Ngong Road, na natumai kwamba itapelekea wewe kupata nafuu unapofika kazini hapa katika bunge la Senate. Jambo la pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba mimi ni baadhi ya wale ambao wanakaa katika ile kamati ya SBC ama huduma za bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kweli tunapata msukumo sana kutoka kwa hao wenzetu ambao tunawakilisha katika kamati ile, kwa sababu ukiangalia ratiba ya masuala ambayo yalikuwa yashughulikiwe leo hii, Mheshimiwa Enock Wambua ametoka Kitui leo asubuhi ili aweze kuuliza masuala yake kwa yule waziri wa usafiri. Kuna masuala mengi hata mimi nilikuwa nataka nimuulize yule ambaye ni waziri wa masuala ya kifedha kuhusu mfumo mzima wa e-citizen ambao Wakenya wengi wanatusukuma tufanye kitu juu yake. Kwa hivyo ni jambo la kuvunja moyo sana, haswa kwa waziri Aisha Jumwa ambaye nilimuona juzi Mheshimiwa Speaker akiwa maeneo ya kule Western akiwarai wakazi wa Vihiga kutoruhusu viongozi fulani kuzungumza iwapo maoni yao yatakinzana na maoni yake ama maoni ya watu wa mrengo wake. Na nilishtuka sana kwa sababu najua mawaziri wafai kujiingiza katika siasa, na aliibua hisia kali sana kwangu kwa sababu alizungumzia swala ambalo lilikuwa linanihusu wakati moja nikiwa katika eneo bunge lake.
Senator wa Nairobi.
Mheshimiwa Speaker, namaliza.
Hoja ambayo iko mbele ya Seneti kwa sasa,
naam,
ni kutokuwepo kwa mawaziri. Walioyafanya wiki iliyopita ama mwezi uliopita hayaambatani kamwe na hoja ambayo iko mbele yetu.
Nimekuelewa Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Uzungumze pengine unashtumu vikali ama
ndo nachanga huo ukali yani Speaker, tafadhali.
Unaanzia mbali sana.
Kwa dakika moja tu nimalize.
Umeanzia mbali.
Yaani kitu ambacho nilikuwa nataka kiibuke wazi ni kwamba mawaziri hawa wanapata nafasi ya kufanya mambo mengine, lakini shughuli ya bunge hawatilii kipaumbele. Alikuwepo kwenye mazishi, nimetoka kwenye station ya redio ya KBC, wananiambia alikuwepo jana na yeye katika kituo hicho hicho. Kama anapata fursa ya kwenda mazishini, kukemea viongozi, kwenda katika vyombo vya habari, kwa nini asije hapa na sisi pia tupate fursa ya kuzungumza naye? Kwa sababu dadangu Gloria, Mheshimiwa Senator Gloria Orwoba, wiki iliyopita alitukemea sana, haswa viongozi wa vyama ambao walishiriki ile mdahalo ama dialogue ambayo ilikuwepo, ya kwamba tuliwacha masuala ya kina mama nyuma. Nilikuwa nataka waziri aje hapa adhirishe kwamba si kwa kukosa kuwasilisha hoja zetu kama viongozi wa ODM, bali kuna masuala ambayo yalikuwa yanafanyika ndani ya wizara yake. Kwa hivyo ni yeye pekee alikuwa anaweza kuniondoa katika mtego uliokuwa umetegwa na Mheshimiwa Gloria. Lakini sasa hayupo hapa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa, mimi nataka nikemee vikali kukosa kuja mbele ya bunge kwa Mheshimiwa Aisha Jumwa, haswa kwa sababu wenzake wengine walikuwa na ile courtesy ya kuandika barua kwa Speaker. Heshima, asante Mheshimiwa Speaker. Walikuwa na ile heshima kwa bunge hili kuandika barua kusema kwamba ama katesi, naambiwa unaweza sema katesi Mheshimiwa Speaker. Wakaandika barua kujulisha wabunge kwamba hawatafika. Na Mheshimiwa Speaker, nataka nikuombe swala moja tu. Wakati ambapo tulikuwa katika mkutano wa SBC, niliuliza swala, je, kuna njia gani ya kuwajulisha wale ambao wameuliza maswala mapema kwamba maswala yao hayatapata kujibiwa kwa sababu waziri ameandika barua? Lakini nikaelezwa kwamba kutakuwa na ugumu kwa sababu wenzetu hawa wakiambiwa kwamba waziri haji na wao pia hawaji. Tunataka tu tungependa Mheshimiwa Kadhuri Murungi apambane na hali yake kule Ngong Road, afike hapa hata kama waziri hayuko tuweze ku...
Senator Wameru, hoja ya nidhamu yako ni...
Niko kwenye hoja ya nidhamu.
Hii imeruhusiwa, hii hoja yangu imeruhusiwa vizuri na Bwana Speaker. Bwana Speaker, sio vema kiongozi seneta wa Nairobi yale mambo yanazungumzwa kwa mkutano SBC, ni bora kweli aje hapa kwa Seneti aweze kuweka haya maneno wazi yale yanazungumzwa kwa kikao cha SBC. Na mbona anatoa siri ya kamati ya SBC, anakuja kutoa hizo siri hapa? Sababu Bwana Speaker.
Asante sana Senator Wameru. Senator Wameru, utendakazi wa Seneti unafanyika katika ukumbi huu na pia katika kamati zetu, na hakuna siri ambayo tuweza kuificha, maanake kazi ile yote ni kazi ya Seneti. Kwa hivyo Senator wa Nairobi amefanya vyema kuweka paruanja ile hali ilivyokuwa kule. Endelea umalize hoja.
Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker kwa kuniopoa kutoka kwa mikono ya Mheshimiwa Wameru. Mheshimiwa, kwa kweli mimi ni mwakilishi pale SBC wa hawa wenzangu hapa. na ni muhimu kwamba yote ambayo yanaendelea pale tuweze kuwajuza, kwa sababu ulivyosema wewe mwenyewe hamna siri. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuomba tu ya kwamba kuwe na mfumo, hata kama arafa itaandikwa kwa yule seneta ambaye alikuwa ameuliza swala mwenyewe, pasi na kuweka paruanja ulivyosema, lakini mwenye kuuliza maswala hayo ajulishe kwamba kwa bahati mbaya ama kwa sababu moja ama nyingine, yule waziri ambaye ulikuwa unataka kumuuliza maswala hatafika leo, ili watu waweze kujipanga, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini ni vizuri tuwe hapa kwa ajili ya shughuli zingine za bunge, na natumai kwamba kikao hiki hakitatibuka kwa huu utovu wa nidhamu unaoonyeshwa na wale mawaziri kama Aisha Jumwa. Nakushukuru Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, kwani wewe utanifundisha vile nitazungumza katika Senate?
Senator Boni, don't engage your colleagues.
Thank you.
Talk through the chair.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have this inkling that the minister who has failed to come rudely this morning is holed somewhere following these proceedings now, just to see how we are going to handle her case. And I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you allow the House to exercise Standing Order number 51D. And because the minister is watching these proceedings, 51D, Mr. Speaker, states that the Senate may, where a cabinet secretary fails without reasonable cause to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the cabinet secretary. This minister is now ripe for motion of censure because she has never appeared before this House. And severally, we have asked her to come and respond to matters of grave national importance. She's a letdown to the structure of government. She's failing the executive, and with due respect, without being seen to be using the name of the president, I put it to the president that this is dereliction of duty. This minister is not fit to hold public office. If she was, she would not have failed to find time to be here this morning, and last week find time to go and consult with the leader of the opposition in waiting at his Capitol Hill office. Why does she choose to transact matters on gender, 2/3 rule, at Capitol Hill, and she cannot come and appeal the same, for the same in this House? Mr. Speaker, you must use the vast powers in your possession. You protect the integrity of the Senate. A minister cannot believe that she can hold us at ransom. There are so many young women. There are so many middle-aged women. There are so many women of advanced age, Mr. Speaker, who are fit to serve this country as minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise under Standing Order number 105 on statement of fact, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the good senator from Malinya, the senator of Kakamega, has indicated that when the minister went to Capitol Hill, the minister was transacting on particular agenda, which he has said was agenda about women. Can he prove to this House that is privy to the conversation that took the minister to Capitol Hill, whether there were formal conversations or informal conversation, and whether indeed he is privy to the agenda?
Senator Eddie,
yes.
Let's save time to transact business. You know, there was a press conference after the meeting, and everything is in the public domain. So just conclude, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to the young senator from Migori.
Don't appeal, just proceed to conclude your
Yes,
remarks.
that if we must defend certain positions, let us defend them reasonably.
I've already told him that, Senator.
Thank you.
Just proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we worked so hard to form this government. You and I, and many others, we were not working hard so as to allow people in office, people who would then, Mr. Speaker, be tiptoeing in and out of office. We wanted people to stamp their authority so that our women, in fact, I believe, what is the name of, yes, Senator Gloria, I think she's the youngest in the House. She should be appointed the minister in place of this mama who doesn't have any idea of how important it is to appear before this House. Oh, Miraj is the youngest. He was quarreling me, that's why I did not.
If you're done, kindly take your seat. Senator Enoch Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to condemn in the strongest terms possible this trend that is actually gaining root in this House, that cabinet secretaries decide whether to attend committee meetings or plenary, and they know somehow that they can get away with it. Mr. Speaker, I have argued elsewhere, and I want to argue here, that we are the people, we are the leaders, to give this House the dignity that is due to it. And it will not happen, Mr. Speaker, if we entertain a situation where honorable senators wake up early on Wednesday morning, fully aware that they are coming to interact with cabinet secretaries on matters related to dockets that these cabinet secretaries had. And out of 3, not a single CS shows up. The Speaker, in other jurisdictions, something would give. In other jurisdictions, the Speaker, the chair would stamp the authority of this House and demand that if there is a cabinet secretary within the boundaries of this country, they must appear before this House in the next 30 minutes, and that would happen. Mr. Speaker, this casual way of dealing with the Senate, and we are not even overreaching our mandate as a Senate. The Constitution, not even our standing orders, the Constitution is very clear. Article 153, on the decisions, responsibility, and accountability of the cabinet. It states very clearly in black and white that a cabinet secretary, I'm reading verbatim, Article 153(3), that a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. Mr. Speaker, that statement is explicit as explicit can get. The decision by the cabinet secretary for roads, that's where I'm going to begin, because I have 2 questions that are listed for a response from the CS responsible for roads. Mr. Speaker, the CS for roads knows very well, wherever he is, that the matters that I'm raising, those questions, are matters that he addressed himself to when he was a senator in this House representing Elgeyo Marakwet. Now he is a CS, he can make a decision on the compensation of the people from Kibwezi all the way to Mwingi, persons affected by a road project, and he just decides to stay away. The Speaker, I take great exception to that decision. Lastly, on the matter of Senate CS for gender, Aisha Jomo. Mr. Speaker, I was really excited about today's sitting because there is a matter that we would have put to rest today. There have been accusations and counter-accusations from our honorable lady senators and from the women of this country about the place of the two-third gender rule in the NADCO report. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with the CS responsible for that matter on the floor of this House, so that she can tell us what role she played. Mr. Speaker, we would have put this matter to rest today, because it is her who approached the NADCO committee and said, let us remove this matter from your discussion because there is something that I am doing and I'm very sure I will succeed. That's a matter that we would have held a conversation around today, Mr. Speaker, and settled that matter. And that way, Mr. Speaker, I'm still pursuing the line that because you have the power, Mr. Speaker, and that power is given to you by the supreme law of the land, to demand that in the next 30 minutes, CS Aisha Jumwa makes an appearance on the floor of this Senate so that we transact that business and we get done with it. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi nitoe maoni yangu. Bwana Spika, leo waziri wa fedha hakufika hapa Seneti, waziri wa barabara hakufika Seneti, waziri wa jinsia pia hakufika Seneti. Bwana Spika, ile kanuni ya kudumu 51D ambayo Seneta Khalwale ambaye ameitaja iko na adhabu kubwa sana kwa hawa mawaziri ambao ni kuleta hoja hapa ya kuwatoa kazini. Lakini Bwana Spika, mimi ningekuwa nimefikiria kwamba SBC wangekaa tubadilishe hii sheria ama tuiongezee na hapo chini. Mbali na kutumia nyundo kuua inzi, Bwana Spika, tungeweka kwamba iwe ni automatic ama ni mtu akikosa kufika kwa mara ya kwanza, Spika bila kuuliza swali ni $1,000,000. Mara ya pili ni $5,000,000 na mtu analipa mwenyewe, waziri analipa mwenyewe. Mara ya tatu ndio hii kanuni ya kudumu 51D iletwe hapa hoja. Na nilikuwa naomba wale wenzetu ambao wanakaa kwa SBC tutengeneze kitu ambao tunaweza kuitumia. Iwe ni automatic, sio lazima speaker akitoa ruling. Umekosa ni $1,000,000. Ukiwa umekosa mara pili ni $5,000,000. Mara ya tatu ni hoja. Iwe ni automatic, sio kitu ambao tunakuja kudebate. Hivi Bwana Speaker, tukigeuza kanuni zetu itatusaidia kupeleka message kwa hawa wenzetu ambao wamekaa kwa nafasi hizo kwamba ni lazima tuheshimu seneti na tuheshimu nafasi ambazo sisi tunafanya kwa niaba ya wananchi. Asante sana Mheshimiwa.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with colleagues who have spoken before us that Senate does not sit here. And the fact that we amended the law to bring ministers or cabinet secretaries to the House to answer questions, that just Senate doesn't sit here in vain, and that the ministers and or cabinet secretaries must take it so seriously, and that the law should then demand, I want to agree with Senator Mungatana, that it becomes very punitive unless there is a sufficient reason, and which can only be a cabinet meeting, No other reason, or maybe even if one had proved that they are unwell. But even in that position, give notice early enough. Not the way Senator Juma has done, to give a notice, you know, this morning, to send a letter this morning, is really ridiculous. It is disrespectful to this House. And Mr. Speaker, I urge you to stamp your authority that she be awarded 30 minutes to appear before this Senate or fail the total consequences of impeachment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join my colleagues in expressing strongest reservations on what we should be doing. Mr. Speaker, when we amended these standing orders, it was in the interest of all people who we represent with. We don't represent ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And this habit of cabinet secretaries not appearing when required, we used to see it in committees, but it looks like we have been lax enough that they are now taking plenary for granted, Mr. Speaker. Because I think if we were aware that Cabinet Secretary of Roads, Treasury, and Gender was not appearing, Mr. Speaker, sir, then there would be no need of scheduling them on the order paper. We would be even doing motions or bills or other statements, Mr. Speaker. So it is very unfortunate that today in the morning, Mr. Speaker, we woke up very early. And you know, yesterday I heard through rumors, Mr. Speaker, that CSS would not be appearing. I wish in the past or in future, as my brothers have suggested and sisters, colleagues, that they should communicate to us, Mr. Speaker, because you can see I'm the heaviest casualty, Mr. Speaker, because 3/4 of questions that were to be asked was through you, was truly, and the people of Nandi were glued to their TV stations, Mr. Speaker, knowing that we'll get real answers today on the status of roads, Mr. Speaker. The nation was glued that today we'll know the status of Kenya Airways and financial operations and other operations, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, many people from Kericho County would have known at the renovation and expansion of Kerengaya Strip in Kericho, Mr. Speaker. So I find it out of place, Mr. Speaker. I remember during Kibaki era, President Kibaki era, when President Kibaki used to know that you are supposed to appear before Parliament, he would prefer that you appear before Parliament before going to any other state functions, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and we have agreed at the floor of this House before that two important functions of a cabinet secretary or executive is one is a cabinet meeting and number two is appearing before Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is a calculated evasion of not appearing before this House, Mr. Speaker. So I request, Mr. Speaker, in future, I don't know what Senate Business Committee where you chair, you need to provide guidance, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with what senators have said. Any minister who does not appear when required by this House, Mr. Speaker, should be fined heavily. And I'm happy that the Powers and Privileges Bill passed yesterday. One question goes with 5 million, Mr. Speaker, and they pay from their own source, Mr. Speaker. So looking at my questions, the CS should have paid around 20 million, which I know some of the CSs don't have problem with, because nowadays they have a lot of cash running around, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, second and finally is on the issue of gender. I find it expressed reservations. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with, although he has left, my colleague, is it deputy or minority leader, said, Mr. Speaker, that these CSS are busy answering us in matangas, in baby showers, in bridal showers, and birthday parties, Mr. Speaker, but they cannot come and answer. For me, I have always been answered in funerals, Mr. Speaker, which I find it out of place and obnoxious, Mr. Speaker. But when I give the CS of Rose a chance to come and answer these questions on behalf of the great people of Kenya and Nandi, they don't find it convenient. But if they hear this weekend there is a function, a social function of any nature, they will hire a chopper and fly and come and answer before the people, Mr. Speaker. So we should stop taking Kenyans for fools, Mr. Speaker. We cannot operate this way, Mr. Speaker. In fact, my advice to the CSS, They should reduce even going to social gatherings and use this premium platform, Mr. Speaker, where it is organized, you answer, you clarify, you table evidence. Instead of waiting for functions to happen during weekend, Mr. Speaker, or Harambes to come and give out money and bumboozle Kenyans, calaventing, perambulating, which does not help in any way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the CS of gender, I am one believer that CSIS Jumwa is doing extremely well. But today I'm disappointed, Mr. Speaker, because when you are debating NADCO and you are the one who guided us, and I saw some people were trying to blame you yesterday, they don't know how wise you are. I beg to forgive them on your behalf, because they are trying to blame you on the issue of NADCO, Mr. Speaker. When the NADCO report was being presented, we were told there was a tactical, calculated move by the gender ministry that they were doing somewhere mysteriously to address the issue of a third gender rule. Mr. Speaker, I woke up on behalf of all women, girls, and many others, Mr. Speaker, to come and listen to this strategy that is being employed by gender to address a third gender rule, Mr. Speaker. And you can see the number of women senators in the Senate today is quite high, Mr. Speaker, because we really wanted to find out how do we resolve this thing that has been elusive since 1994 on achieving the third gender rule. But I want to assure the women leaders, women senators, and women of this country, there is hope, because the president himself believes in a third gender rule, Mr. Speaker. So even if the Speaker, and I want to agree with my colleagues, let the CS appear in the next 30 minutes, we can suspend the House, ensure wherever she is, because I am aware, Mr. Speaker, there is no cabinet meeting today. So I am assured that there is no any other urgent thing that they can, Mr. Speaker. So why don't you suspend the House, order the CS to appear within 30 minutes, and also to come with a fine, Mr. Speaker, to ensure the senators are comfortable, so that when they are answering questions, Mr. Speaker, please, going into the future, let SBC guide us or become innovative. We are not guiding the ABC, you are the one guiding. Let us become innovative, Mr. Speaker. And I want to advise colleagues, let us, the issues of the plenary and the Senate remains here. When you want to make your comments in the press conferences and funerals and other things, please reserve it there. But don't discuss the conduct and functionality of the Speaker of the Senate. Other lower house will defend their own Speaker. Us will defend ours. So if you have a problem, please discuss it with your wife in your bedroom at night, but don't bring it out in the public. Mr. Speaker, I express strong reservations against non-appearances of CSS. I thank you.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I want to start by saying that, Mr. Speaker, on 30th of November, 2023, the Prime Cabinet Secretary was to appear in this House. And, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, he did not appear. And colleague and esteemed senators did pronounce themselves on the issue very strongly. But it appeared like it ended there. We did not take any action. And Mr. Speaker, I empathized with you because you even had today the whip, the majority whip, inviting us to the, inviting our attention to Standing Order number 51D, which, Mr. Speaker, says that the Senate may, where a Cabinet Secretary fails, without reasonable cause, and underline the word reasonable cause, to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the Cabinet Secretary. Now, I do understand that, Mr. Speaker, the requirement of this particular standing order is to the extent that the Speaker being a neutral figure running the House cannot initiate any action under that particular standing order. And therefore, it behooves my fellow colleague senators to actually take action. So what I would have wanted to see is perhaps Senator Mungatana or Senator Boni Aluale actually taking action and coming to this House and telling us, this is my motion, to censor this particular CS for disrespecting this House and taking it forward. That's the way we should be moving as a Senate. And I wanted to protect you, Mr. Speaker. Now that you've protected us so many times this entire year, may I protect you on that? But then, I also wanted to observe that we as senators elected by the people are very reasonable people. That is why the word reasonable appears in that particular standing order. And therefore, we are not malicious. To the extent that if there is any CS that takes us seriously and takes us at our own estimate of the seriousness we bring in this country as a House, then they should be able to take us seriously. What do I mean by this, Mr. Speaker? I'm in possession of the 3 letters of the CSS who are supposed to be in this House today. And I will argue a case on which kind of CSS we should be able to censor and the ones that we should not be able to censor. Mr. Speaker, on 28th of February, 2024, the CS for transport, that is CS Kipchumba Murkomen, wrote a letter. And this letter, he did indicate, the title of it was, he was requesting for a rescheduling of appearance date before the Senate plenary. And his reasons were this. And, having accepted that he received a letter from this House dated 27th, meaning that he was responding on 28th, a day immediately after I received the letter from this Senate, he said that unfortunately the date of my scheduled appearance before the Senate coincides with a hearing in the matter of arbitration proceedings, that is the KU Railways Holding Limited versus the Republic of Kenya and the Republic of Uganda in London, which is an emerging issue that actually came. And Mr. Speaker, I'm privy to the fact that this particular letter was considered by SBC, and therefore the understanding was reached at with this particular CS. A reasonable House as the Senate wouldn't censor this kind of CS because he has been respectful, he has wrote his letter on time, and indeed responded in a record time to the extent that SBC did deliberate on it. I don't see a problem with this, Mr. Speaker. The second is actually CS Chris Kipto, Daktari mwenyewe. It's a PS. He responded to the request for him to appear before this House. And his reason also, I might invite the Senate to consider, which was, he will be out of country, that is the CS will be out of the country, attending the 56th session of the Economic Commission for Africa and Annual Conference of African Ministries on Finance, this date. And Mr. Speaker, sitting on finance and budget and knowing how much we are struggling as a country to create a debt management strategy, this is a very important thing that the CS has to attend. And what impresses me is that he responded on 29th, it came to SBC, it was indeed considered, and communications were made. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have CS, Honorable Aisha Jumwa. I am privy to the fact that her letter came yesterday when the Senate already had adjourned to go home. These colleague senators had to come here today in the morning, knowing very well that we are expecting this CS. Now listen to the content of this letter, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of writing this letter is to confirm I forwarded the responses to the statement sought by Senator Amida Kibwana on gender-based violence in Kenya's political space. Further, due to conflicting schedule, I will not be able to attend the meeting scheduled to take place on Wednesday. The other colleagues, CSS, have indicated that they will desire to be here. They are requesting for a rescheduling of the meeting. And these are CS who tell you, I will not attend that meeting on the day that you want me to attend, My responses, I've given them to whoever asked me. Not even recognize that these people are actually people who are representing the larger population. And therefore, if you find that my responses are not adequate enough, you can consider calling me back to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, Chapter 10 of the Constitution talk about 3 very serious C's that we as a House must then try to deliberate on. Number 1, it talks about a leader who holds public office to the magnitude that Honorable Aisha Jumwa holds, and even ourselves, must be a capable leader. Number 2, must be a competent leader. And number 3, must be a credible leader. All those C's are disputed by the content of this letter. This is the highest level of disrespect, not only to you as a speaker, but also to this House. So I hold the view that in response to the content of the letter that we have received from Honorable Aisha Jumwa, this House must then invite the content of Standing Order number 51. And a member of this House, and I want to wish the majority side the courage, especially the majority whip, that this afternoon, go draft a motion and bring into this House for the censorship of this particular minister. Because it's the highest level of disrespect. And I've shown you very clearly why the other 2 ministers, I will take their responses as a senator as first, reasonable, 2, respectful of the time of our speaker, and respectful of the time of this honorable House, and more importantly, accountable to the people of Kenya. But this is completely unacceptable. And I think for us to send a message of why we did make the decision to actually come with these particular standing orders, this CS must be censored. And if the majority whip does not take the courage to draft that censorship motion, and then number 2, the Senator for Nandi does not follow with the courage to try and do that censor motion, Mr. Speaker, I will take the courage and come with that censor motion. So that as a House, we send a message to CSS that we are not here to waste our time. Mr. Speaker, we have got so many bills, and again, amazing bills. I've read the bill by the senator for, the good senator from Mombasa, Senator Miraj, who actually cares about gender issues more than what the CS has done here, in a place where violence is killing women in this country. And I need to be spending my time considering a motion, Mr. Speaker, a very good motion. And we have got so many other motions other bills that are very good in this House that we need to be spending our time discussing the absence of CSS every single time. So, Mr. Speaker, as I sit, I plead that this particular one needs a serious response from this House, and I hope that the majority side, led by the bullfighter, Senator Boni Aluale, will take action. But if they don't, then today or tomorrow, I will bring that motion, and I hope that the senators will reasonably find that motion very reasonable and very good for the people of Kenya and for this CSS. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii niweze kuchangia. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kukashifu hayo mazoea ya mawaziri wetu kuitwa hapa, ilhali tayari tukiangalia katika orodha ya mambo yale ambayo tulikuwa tunapanga kufanya katika bunge hili, tayari tumeyanukuu na tunajipanga vilivyo kusudi tuweze kuyaangazia. Kwa hivyo ninakashifu kitendo hicho. Lakini hata hivyo, Bwana Spika, ninataka kuungana na mwenzangu Seneta Mungatana vile alivyosema ya kwamba ukiangalia katika kanuni zetu za kudumu 51 day, Bwana Spika, ninaona kwamba tutakuwa tumetumia nguvu nyingi sana kwa yule waziri kusema ya kwamba yeye, nimesikia kulingana na wale wengi waliongea hapa, wanasema ndio waziri wa barabara alipeana sababu, waziri wa fedha ndio amepeana sababu, lakini waziri wa jinsia yeye achukuliwe hatua ambazo ni kali zaidi. Lakini Bwana Spika, nikiangalia ni vizuri vile ambavyo Senator Mungatana alivyosema ya kwamba katika SBC yetu tupange ya kwamba tukue na faini ambayo tutakayopiga waziri kabla hajachukua hili jukumu la kusema ya kwamba tunataka kumtimua, Bwana Spika. Na hata tukimpatia ile faini hata kama ni milioni 1, milioni 5 vile alivyopendekeza, Bwana Spika, hata ijapokuwa yule waziri hajafika katika jumba hili, ndio tuangalia kwamba amepeana sababu ambayo inafaa, kwa sababu pengine ameenda shughuli ambazo ni rasmi na hawezi kosa kwenda, kama nilivyokuwa nikimsikiza Senator Eddie akisema ya kwamba ndio yule waziri ama katibu wa kudumu amekwenda mahali ambapo kunafaa, na kwa sababu yako katika kamati ya fedha anasema ya kwamba ndio waziri hangeweza kuja. Kwa hivyo nataka kukubaliana na Mungatana tuwe na mfululizo mzuri, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ndio leo amekosea. Na hata mimi nilipokuwa wakati ule mwingine waziri wa usalama nilimgoja hapa, nilikuwa nimejitayarisha kwa sababu watu wa Laikipia walikuwa na changamoto mambo ya usalama. Unapata vile vile kuna shida nyingi watu wanapitia Elgeyo Marakwet na mahali kwingine, Bwana Spika, na Baringo. Tunauliza maswali hapa na waziri anasema hataweza kuja. Lakini Spika, sababu anayokupatia unaona ni sababu inayotosha zaidi, anakuambia kumetokea maafa Lamu na hangeweza kuja, na ukiangalia vizuri unaona hayo ni mambo ambayo ni ya dharura yalitokea. Kwa hivyo tunapaswa kuangalia. Nataka kukubaliana na Mungatana 100%. Kwa hivyo kuwa tukiangalia, kwa sababu ndio anaweza kuwa ana upendo na angetaka kuja, lakini hata hivyo, Bwana Spika, tusiwe tukakejeliwa sisi kama seneti, kwa sababu tukifanya haya mazoea, Bwana Spika, tukubaliane na wao, itaonekana sisi, na wamekuwa wakiangalia hivyo. Leo tukubaliane, tuseme ya kwamba ndio Kipchumba Murkomen waziri wetu asije, yule mwingine asije. Kama mawaziri hawatakuwa akija, Bwana Spika, tuondoe katika kanuni zetu za kudumu. Hatutaki mawaziri wawe wakija hapa, tukutane nao katika mazishi, tuulizie maswali kwa mazishi, ama katika kamati zetu vile ambavyo tulikuwa tukifanya. Kwa hivyo, Bwana Spika, nakubaliana na wale walioongea, lakini nikimuuliza Eddie kwa unyenyekevu mwingi, nikimuuliza kiongozi kiranja wetu Boni Halwale, waziri wetu ambaye ni waziri wa jinsia, kwa leo, Bwana Spika, kwa leo tusilete ule mswada wa kumtimua, lakini tuseme ya kwamba aambiwe amefanya makosa, Bwana Spika. Na vile vile nimewasikia, Bwana Spika, wengine wakikurai uandike barua ama utoe hukumu ya kusema ya kwamba dakika 30 waweze kuwa amefika hapa. Bwana Spika, ningekurai tu kwa leo tukubaliane, uambie kosa limetendeka na utoe msimamo mkali, Bwana Spika, lakini kwenda mbele, Bwana Spika, tusimame wima kama nyumba ya seneti, tusije tukadharauliwa na kukejeliwa. Bwana Spika, nataka kushutumu kitendo kilichotendeka na nasema asanti kwa wewe kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Miraj.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kuweza kunipa fursa hii, na mimi nitoe hisia zangu kutokamana na kutofika kwa mawaziri wetu katika kikao chetu cha leo asubuhi. Kwa hakika ni jambo la kutamausha na la kukasirisha na kughadhabisha, kwa sababu tumerauka, tumewacha vitanda vyetu ili tuweze kupata mwelekeo wa yale maswali ibuka, na sisi wengine ambao hatukuweza kupendekeza maswali tuweze kupeana maswali juu ya maswali ambayo tayari yalikuwa yameulizwa. Na mimi leo niseme kwamba sitakubaliana na maseneta wenzangu, kwa sababu mawaziri ambao hawakuweza kufika hapa ni mawaziri watatu, lakini kidole cha lawama kimenyoshewa tu waziri ambaye anatokea katika mkoa wa Pwani. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kutamausha kuona ya kwamba sisi watu wa Pwani, haswa viongozi, huwa tunaangaliwa tu kama njia moja ya kuweza kufutia miguu mambo yote. Ni mara kadha mawaziri wamekuwa wakiitwa hapa na hawafiki, lakini sioni ni kwa nini kila mtu anamnyoshia kidole cha lawama dadangu kiongozi ambaye anatoka katika mkoa wa Pwani. Kwani yeye si binadamu ama si kiongozi ambaye anaweza kufikwa na dharura?
What is the point of order, Senator Mandago? Senator Miraj just yield. What is the point of order, Senator Mandago?
Mheshimiwa Spika,
Ni haki Seneta Miraji kudai kwamba wapwani wanaangaliwa kwa
Seneta Mandago, ni kanuni gani ya kudumu ambayo unataka kuitumia katika hoja hii?
Statement of facts.
Na
105.
Ujue kwamba ukichagua kuzungumza lugha ya Kiswahili itabidi uendelee.
Mheshimiwa Spika, wewe ndio umenichanganya. Ni haki Seneta Miraji kudai ya kuwa watu wa pwani wanaangaliliwa, wanaonewa kwa njia ya kufutia miguu, ili hali katika serikali hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, wewe mwenyewe ni Spika ya Seneti ambaye ni chumba ambaye ni hapa house katika bunge. Waziri Aisha Jumwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni baadhi ya wale wa mama wachache wameteuliwa kwa hii serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, Seneta Miraji mwenyewe amenominatiwa kuwa kwenye hii bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, atoe utafiti.
Seneta Mandago, tafadhali tumia Kiswahili sanifu siku nyingine. Hakuna kitu kama nominatiwa, ameteuliwa.
Ameteuliwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo, je, ni haki Seneta Miraji kudai haya madai ambayo ameweka kwenye chumba hii ya Seneti?
Seneta Miraji.
Bwana Spika, yangu
kuna hoja nidhamu nyingine hapa, Seneta Miraji.
Mr. Speaker, I raise under Constitution Article 152 4A because there is assertion that Senator Miraj has stated that the reason Mheshimiwa Honorable Aisha Jumwa says she's being targeted because she comes from coast is very unfortunate statement, because according to Article 152 4A, each person appointed as a cabinet secretary A, assumes office by swearing or affirming faithfulness to the people and the Republic of Kenya, and obedience to this Constitution before the President and in accordance with the third schedule as provided by the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order for my good sister, Senator Miraj Abdullahi, to assert and state that, Mr. Speaker, that the reason CS Aisha Jumwa is being targeted because she comes from coast? I think, Mr. Speaker, the President appointed Aisha Jumwa out of competency and meritocracy. It was not because she comes from coast. It is because we believe that she would perform as a cabinet secretary. Mr. Speaker, can she withdraw, because it will not look very good in our answer and also before the eyes of Kenyans, because we don't want to see any CSS through the eyes of regions or tribe or ethnicity or religion they come from, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Miraj, certainly your statement is out of order. In fact, it goes to impute improper motive on your colleagues, that the reason why they are raising their concerns, why the minister is not present, is solely because she's from the coast. Kindly proceed to withdraw that.
Asante Bwana Spika, labda Kiswahili changu ndo kimewakanganya. Wacha niendelee tafadhali Bwana Spika, nilinde.
I have made a ruling.
Ndio nasema natoa kauli hiyo na naomba msamaha ikiwa hivyo ndio nilivyoeleweka.
Endelea na
nikiendelea katika kutoa hisia zangu ni kwamba Bwana Spika, mawaziri wote wameandika barua, na kweli nakubaliana na bunge hili kwamba Waziri Aisha ameandika barua kuchelewa. Lakini katika kauli za maseneta wenzangu walipokuwa wamesimama kuzungumzia kutamaushwa kwao, hakuna hata mmoja ambaye amekupa wewe rai ya kuweza kumtafuta waziri na kumuuliza ni kitu gani haswa ambacho kimemfanya yeye asiweze kufika leo hapa. Wameweza kuwaelewa mawaziri wengine na wakakubali zile changamoto ambazo wamesema wako nazo, lakini kwa nini iwe ni waziri Aisha peke yake na ni mawaziri watatu ambao sote tumerauka ili kuja kuuliza maswali? Na masuala ya jinsia, waziri, ni masuala ya kila mtu, si masuala ya jinsia ya kike peke yake. Kweli tulitamaushwa na yale yaliyoendelea katika ripoti ya NADCO, lakini ilibainika wazi ya kwamba viongozi wa kike tulikwenda kupitia majopo tofauti na tukapeana hisia zetu, lakini komiti ya NADCO wenyewe waliamua kwamba watawachia majukumu hayo wizara na ile kamati ambayo aliibuni ili waweze kupea mwelekeo sahihi ambao wanautaka. Kwa hivyo nataka kusema katika bunge hili la Seneti ya kwamba waziri Aisha Jumwa, hakuna mkono wowote ama lengo lolote la kuweza kuondoa azma ya wanawake kuwafikia jinsia ya theluthi mbili katika katiba yetu ya Kenya. Na ningependa pia
late the Honorable CS, when she appears, to be able to shed light on that subject, because we are not here to defend any CS, and the information you're giving, it's better given by the CS herself when she appears next. Have you concluded your remarks? Thank you, Senator Miraj. Senator Wafula.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo la kutamausha sana sisi kama maseneta kurauka asubuhi na mapema, wengine kupuzilia mbali staftahi, ili tuje tujadili mambo muhimu ya serikali na nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, baadhi ya mawaziri ambao wamealikwa hapa ni lazima wajue kwamba kuja kwao hapa kutapeana mwelekeo na suluhisho ama kupeana matumaini kwa Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Rais amekuwa na zuru pembe mbalimbali za nchi ya Kenya, akiahidi na kupeana mwelekeo kwa miradi ya maendeleo kwa Wakenya. Na miradi hii ambayo yeye hupeana mwelekeo kwayo, wale ambao lazima watekeleze ni mawaziri ambao wachache wao wamealikwa hapa na wamefeli kufika hapa. Waziri wa barabara na uchukuzi anajua fika jinsi Mheshimiwa Rais na viongozi kwa mfano wa mkoa Magharibi hususan Bungoma tumekuwa tunadai na kuitisha uwepo wake mashinani, ajionee na aelewe ni sababu zipi zinashinikiza sisi kudai miradi ya maendeleo na barabara. Barabara ya Msikoma kwenda Mungazi, barabara kutoka Kakamega kuja Msikoma, barabara kutoka Chwele kwenda Lwakhakha. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni lazima waziri huyu amke kutoka usingizi wa pono, atembee wima na ajue Kenya tunalipa ushuru. Hatuta ngoja Mheshimiwa Rais azuru atuahidi peupe mchana na waziri amejifunga kwenye mahandaki akipora na kufurahia jasho la Wakenya. Juzi nimeuliza maswali hapa Mheshimiwa Spika kuhusiana na mimba za mapema.
What is the point of order, Senator Mandaka?
Honorable Speaker, is it in order for the
Have a seat, Senator Ofuli, please.
Understanding on the 105, Honorable Speaker, is it in order for the Senator for Bungoma to allege that the Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Roads is stealing and enjoying public resources in his office? Does he have evidence, Honorable Speaker?
Senator Wafula, you certainly need to substantiate that allegation, failure of which you may have to withdraw and apologize.
Naomba kuondoa hoja hiyo na kushinikiza Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba iwapo mfanyikazi ama waziri analipwa mshahara, anaendeshwa kwa magari ya kifahari, anatibiwa kwa pesa za mtoza ushuru, ile hali anayelipa ushuru hamuoni mtumishi wa umma popote katika kaunti hiyo, na mtumishi huyu hajalalamika kwamba analishwa na kuvishwa na kuendeshwa vizuri, bila shaka Mheshimiwa Spika anafurahia jasho la Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, waziri wa jinsia, niliuliza maswali kuhusiana na mimba za mapema katika kaunti ya Bungoma kwa sababu ya upungufu wa sodo, upungufu wa fedha za kuimarisha biashara za kina mama na wajane. Waziri huyu mpaka leo ameweka nta kwenye masikio na kinywa chake amekifunga kabisa. Tunajiuliza haya maswali kwa sababu alichaguliwa kwa mrengo wa Kenya Kwanza, na ni lazima adhihirishe uwezo wake wa kuchapa kazi kwa kutembea pembe zote na kujadili masuala haya na wananchi wa Kenya. Na haya maswali, Mheshimiwa Spika, yeye na waziri wa elimu lazima watembee pamoja kusuluhisha masuala ya mimba za mapema na masuala ya wanawake na watoto katika taasisi za elimu katika nchi ya Kenya. Sasa kile tunasema sio kwamba tunaomba tafadhali waje, lazima waje. Na mimi niko tayari kujiunga na maseneta wengine kwamba kila mtu lazima wajibike. Mtoza ushuru anatoa jasho na kusaga meno kwa pesa anazotoa. Serikali inalazimisha watu walipe ushuru. Wale wanaochukua ushuru wanafurahi na kutupigia makofi kwa kulipa ushuru. Lakini tunapouliza uwajibikaji, wanatugeuka sisi, wanasema hatuwaheshimu na hatuwapi nafasi. Mimi nasema kwa niaba ya watu wa Bungoma kwamba nitadai haki kwa watu wa Bungoma, nitadai haki kwa Wakenya, ili serikali niliyoipigania na ninayoipigania ipate sifa na ishukuriwe kwa jasho na kwa kazi wanayofanya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mawaziri hawa lazima waje. Asante na nashukuru.
Senator Mundigi.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa ruhusa niweze kuchangia mambo ya ambaye ya mawaziri wataki kufanya kazi kulingana na vile tulipitisha. Nataka nikumbushe mawaziri wote, wakati Bwana Spika tulikuwa na ngangana vile tutakuwa tukiwatarajia katika kikao hiki, kulikuwa nifute kwa Azimio na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, lakini hapo tukaweza kuwa tuliweza kusucceed na tutakuwa tunawaita, na sasa kwa kikao hiki tuo kitu kimoja, hakuna mgawanyiko. Nataka kusema ametukosea aswa, mimi nikiwa ni senator wa Embu County, ambaye siku ya leo ni siku kubwa katika Embu County, ambaye governor wa Embu County mchapakazi amejikakamua na kuongea na wale wafanyikazi ambaye ni wa county, anaenda kwa kikao ya parliament ya Embu kuambia vile amefanya kazi kwa kipindi ya mwaka mmoja. Na sasa ni aibu kubwa sana kama mimi sijahudhuria pale, kwa sababu najua kwa hili kikao inafaa ni governor na senator vile kazi imefanyika. Kwa hiyo nataka kuambia waziri wa barabara na usukuzi amefanya mambo ambaye si mazuri, kwa sababu watu wa Embu County kutoka Makutano kwenda Mwea kwenda Embu Tharaka Nithi mpaka Meru wanataka kujua barabara itapanuliwa namna gani iwe kama zile zingine, kwa sababu kama kuna county imetengwa ni county ya Embu. Ya pili, watu wa Embu County walikuwa wameniambia nisikanyange pale mpaka nikuja hapa niulize Murkomen uwanja ya ndege atatunjengea lini, kwa sababu watu wa Embu wamekubali kulima, tunalima miraa, na unaona mambo ya barabara imeleta sinda, imekuwa ni mambo ya ajali, na wamekubali waweza kujengewa kiwanja ndio tuweze kupeleka miraa yetu huko ng'ambo, ndio tuwe na pesa ambaye ni pesa mkononi na mambo ya sile vitu zingine. Pia walikuwa amenituma nikikuja leo niseme kutoka Karaba kwenda Makema na kwenda Machanga, hiyo vile parapara vile itatengenezwa iwekwe lami, na pia kutoka Kiritire kwenda Karie na kwenda Kiambere, kwenda huko Kiambere huko bahari stima inatoka vile itawekwa lami, na pia mpaka kwenda upande zingine. Kwa hiyo parapara
waziri hayuko kusikia hayo yote malalamishi.
Spika angekuja, hiyo ni maswali yalikuwa yametumwa na watu wa Embu niwaulize.
Sasa hayuko.
Na hiyo, na kama hayuko lakini amekosea watu wa Embu County. Embu County ni sub county ine, tungemuuliza hiyo maswali kwa sababu tunataka miaka ambayo inakuja Embu iwe inatembea vizuri. Ya pili ni waziri wa fedha. Waziri wa fedha amekosea aswa. Sisi ni wakubwa yake katika kikao hiki ya Senate. Unajua Bwana Spika, nilikuwa nimejiandaa kumuuliza miezi tatu ambaye Senate wafanyikazi wa madrivers na security hawajalipwa pesa, na alilipa wafanyikazi wa bunge, na pia unajua hii, kama unjue Bwana Spika, ni miezi 3 maofisi yetu haijalipwa pesa na waziri wa fedha. Hiyo ingine nilikuwa nataka nimuulize, kwa kipindi ya miaka mingi walimu walikuwa na sinda, na mpaka saa hii tulienda tukafanya upelelezi sisi maseneta, tukaona mtu akistahavu akiwa miaka 60, ile swali ningemuuliza anakuwa barua anapata haraka, lakini unakuta tumefuatilia tulesa iko na sinda. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni maswali ningemuuliza. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono vile watu watashukuru hatua, lakini mambo ya kuatimua siko hapo. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza haisemi mambo ya kutimuana, ni mambo ya kusemesana, ndio tuweze kuona vile serikali ya Kenya Kwanza itafanya kazi. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also arise to add my voice to what is being discussed. Mr. Speaker, Article 124 of our Constitution mandates this House in the National Assembly to establish committees and make standing orders for the orderly conduct of the proceedings of the House. Mr. Speaker, therefore, our standing orders as the full force of the Constitution of Kenya. So that, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of Standing Order 51 all the way to 51D as the full force of this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is the assembly of the national leaders of our country, elected, nominated to deal with matters of concern to our counties and the county governments. And how do we do so, Mr. Speaker? We do so through the various structures in place, including asking questions the CSS. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to realize that the institution that sought this House to amend the standing orders, Mr. Speaker, is the President himself, who requested both National Assembly and Senate to amend the standing orders so that the CSS are able to appear and answer questions of concern to our electorate, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is paining and disappointing, Mr. Speaker, that when the time and the date is scheduled for our cabinet to appear, they don't. And Mr. Speaker, I want to agree perhaps that there are situations where they write to you as our Speaker, giving justifiable reasons why they should not appear. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed acceptable that a CS should be able to, in good time, be able to address the House why they are unable to appear. But, Mr. Speaker, my concern is that the trend is continuing to avail. So that, Mr. Speaker, my worry is that in some few, as we proceed, this avenue of these senators being able to use to deal with matters of concern to their counties is going, Mr. Speaker, to diminish. Mr. Speaker, that particular Standing Order 51D on non-attendance of cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, the only punishment provided for there is to censor. And that is what Senator Ocheng was raising. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the proposal that we might have to enhance, apart from censoring a cabinet secretary, Mr. Speaker, let us enhance the punishment. And Mr. Speaker, when governors don't appear before committees of this House, Mr. Speaker, you know what they always do. They are supposed to pay a fine of 500,000 if I'm not wrong, Mr. Speaker. So it is important for this House, Mr. Speaker, to assert its authority on this position so that a fine of an amount that can be agreed by this House should be put in our standing order number 51D, Mr. Speaker, in addition to the provision of moving a censor motion and to censor Cabinet Secretary. Mr. Speaker, Baringo, for example, the county I come from, and in all the other counties, Mr. Speaker, we are facing a lot of challenges. And Mr. Speaker, I can testify before the House that the questions we ask these CSS when they come here, Mr. Speaker, our people are keenly following, Mr. Speaker. And I am aware, even in my county, Mr. Speaker, sometimes the questions are asked here. When I go to the county, the members of the public are able to say, yes, we saw you, we heard you asking this question. So, Mr. Speaker, the value addition to our representation, the value addition to the citizen of our country, Mr. Speaker, through this procedure of cabinet ministers appearing before us, Mr. Speaker, is really, really important. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think my concern mainly is so what from today, what happens tomorrow. I think, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank you because, Mr. Speaker, I have listened to you issuing statements compelling and telling the cabinet secretaries to appear before the House. I think you have been very clear, and even the other House has been very clear. But I think what will make the CSS, Mr. Speaker, to appear here is when we enhance the fine from this censure motion proposed by Article Standing Order 51D to a situation where they can pay fines. Mr. Speaker, we have the capacity, we have the means, we have, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity as a House to implement this. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues and say that it is important that you assert your authority as our Speaker and as a House so that, Mr. Speaker, we have a solution to this situation which is not enabling us to represent our people well, Mr. Speaker. So I join my colleagues in supporting that position.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute in this. Honorable Speaker, first I want to join my colleagues in saying it is not in order for cabinet secretaries to absent themselves from answering questions in this House. Honorable Speaker, the purpose of this session was to make sure that the general public of the Republic of Kenya are able to get direct answers to their issues from the people responsible at the policy level, at the national government and at the county level, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, when cabinet secretaries fail to attend these sessions, they not only fail the Senate and Parliament, Honorable Speaker, but they also fail the people of Kenya. That notwithstanding, Honorable Speaker, this amendment that we brought to this House to allow cabinet secretaries to appear before us, Honorable Speaker, was a position that was developed by the Kenya Kwanza administration, led by our party leader, who is now the President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, when cabinet secretaries fail to appear before this House, they are not only failing Parliament, but they are also insubordinating the appointing authority, Honorable Speaker, because this was a position of the Kenya Kwanza administration that the answers to the public can no longer be passed through many channels, but should come directly from the holders of the office so that the citizens can directly get from them. This would enable the people of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, when cabinet secretaries visit various parts of this country, to be able to refer them to the question and answers they give. Honorable Speaker, this is a vision of cabinet secretaries from appearing, not only in this session, Honorable Speaker, but even before committees of Parliament, must be firmly dealt with, and I concur with my colleagues that we must invoke the necessary powers of this House to make sure the attendance is observed. Honorable Speaker, for the Cabinet Secretary for Gender, Honorable Speaker, this House was very expectant to address the matter of gender parity in government and also in Parliament, Honorable Speaker. This is a matter that has been canvassed in this country for over 30 years. There was only one opportunity available through NATCOM, Honorable Speaker, that this matter was going to be settled once and for all. I was eager myself to ask the Cabinet Secretary who removed the gender agenda from the NATCOM menu, Honorable Speaker, so that women leaders in this country should also not be going around saying we are fighting for women's rights, we are representing women, but the very women are undermining the success of the women. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, the old adage says the enemy of women is actually women. And therefore, failing to appear before this House, the Cabinet Secretary for Gender has actually failed the women of this country. Because this was the opportunity for her to explain what our ministry is doing in order to make sure that that agenda is kept alive and that matter is settled once and for all. Because we have an administration that is keen to ensure women are involved in leadership and decision-making position in this country, Honorable Speaker. Finally, Honorable Speaker, as a House, I want to agree with my colleagues and even be persuaded further that the fines for an appearance should be enhanced. Honorable Sotsi, Honorable Speaker, had proposed an amendment of increasing the fine to 2 million. I am now persuaded that it should even go to 5 million. This kind of contempt can only be met with a harsher punishment, Honorable Speaker. I support.
No, Honorable Onyonka Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to actually reiterate what my colleague, Senator from Senator Mandago, what he has been raising, the issue he has raised. Mr. Speaker, if you remember in 2000, I think 8 or 9, during that time I was at the National Assembly with you. And you remember when cabinet ministers, even Honorable Boni Halwale was there, and I remember Honorable Mugatana was there. Mr. Speaker, anybody who assumes that when a cabinet minister comes to make a presentation on a national matter, that maybe that minister could be wasting his time, or we who are going to listen to the contributions and discussions are actually wasting our time, is wrong. Mr. Speaker, the first thing is that the Kenyan public is interested in listening and hearing how the ministers are going to articulate government policy. Then they will be answering those questions which are critical, because running a country, Mr. Speaker, frequent times you'll have crises, you'll have matters pertaining to emergencies and all that. And then sometimes, Mr. Speaker, that is the reason I wish many of the cabinet members in the KK government would understand that them coming and answering this question, first, they continue with the historical precedent. And number two, the public is very curious and always constantly listening to what we say and what we articulate in terms of trying to solve the issues that affect our country. Mr. Speaker, I really hope that the CSS will take this House seriously, that they will in fact be, if need be, I plead that with my leader, Honorable Cherargei, and the whip, Honorable Halwale, to make a phone call to the president and tell him his ministers are misbehaving. They are letting your government down. Because we come here not because, Mr. Speaker, we are on holiday. We are dealing with matters of national importance. And when a cabinet minister comes, like the other day when Honorable Inturi came, Mr. Minister, I was very happy, because you could see he's seized of the matters, he's discussing these matters intelligently, he's coming in with some solutions. That's what we are looking for in our country, Mr. Speaker. We are not looking for drama and things which are irrelevant. And that's why I'm really pleading with the CSS and the state officers who are being asked to come and attend these meetings. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at our committees, the CS Finance, the Controller Budget, the Auditor General, they are always coming. When we ask them to come, they come. And their record is extremely good.
Why is it that the cabinet members of His Excellency William Ruto's government abdicating their responsibility? And Mr. Speaker, I also want to plead through you and my colleagues who have access to His Excellency the President, tell him that many of these ministers are actually just randa-randaing, doing nothing. They are going on trips. Let them leave those things. Kenya has issues. Let them settle down on the ground. Let them intervene. Let them come to our counties. Mr. Speaker, I have not seen a single CS in Kisii since I became a senator, except Moses Kuria. And yet, previously, the CSS need to move around the country. They need to come and see what is going on.
What is the point of order, Senator Munyihaji?
He's my brother, Senator Onyonka, from the great county of Kisii, in order to say that he has never seen any CS in Kisii, yet CS Machoge comes from Kisii.
Mr. Speaker, I actually wanted to re-emphasize the point. I have actually not even seen Honorable Machogu. Yes, he's in Meru, he's in Murang'a, Tharaka-Nithi, he's going to Kwale, and it's the responsibility of the office. With Honorable Machogu, I wouldn't even raise a query about it for the simple reason that he's running all over, and I see what he's doing in terms of going to the different ministries, different schools and different institutions. I think the portfolio, that is a ministry, my leader, Mr. Speaker, that I would have wished that it had a deputy minister. Because the Minister of Education is too busy, the minister is all over the place. I don't think he's really having his hands on the cake, as they say. But that's a discussion for the other day. I would like to finish, Mr. Speaker, by saying that let the cabinet ministers in the government today realize that they need to do much more, that our expectations are much more, that we know many of them are qualified and many of them can do a good job. But we also know that others are very lazy, Mr. Speaker. So I would like to reiterate what Honorable Mandago has said. That fine that Honorable Sosi has brought, we need to make an amendment. Let's change that thing to 5 million, Honorable Halwale, so that it acts as a deterrence. So that even if, Mr. Speaker, if a minister under CS knows that he's not going to be around and he has gone for official duty, it is automatic. He should write a letter which is acceptable, because we are not idiots. We know that the cabinet minister is traveled somewhere on official business, and it is important that we empathize on that. But this narrative where people just assume that, I hear this, Honorable Halwale, Mr. Speaker, frequently. Oh, the Senate is in nyumba ya wazee, hakuna kitu mnafanya, there's nothing you do there. No, this house is serious. And let these ministers realize we'll be very serious with them. Because other than them giving an apology, we are going to start fining people, we are going to start censoring people, and you know many of them, Mr. Speaker, don't know that under Chapter 6, if somebody comes here and we censor them and ask and say that they cannot hold public office, there's nothing they'll do. The president is the only one who's going to sympathize with them. But if the president realizes that this guy is lazy, why would he save him? He just fires him, brings another one who can perform. With those very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support and let this House be treated with respect and decorum. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, he's already concluded and taken his seat, Senator Kathuri. Honorable Senators, let us end this matter. He's already yielded, so the information certainly is. So, Honorable Senators, I have had your compelling contributions as far as the failure of CSS to attend Senate session for purposes of responding to questions. Now, these compelling contributions that you've made, they would have been relevant if they're made within the context of a motion of censure. In the absence of a motion of censure, what honorable senators are doing is merely to lament. We cannot be reduced to a house of lamentations. This is not the first. Senators are lamenting. This may not be the last. senators will lament. You need to stop lamenting and take it to the next level. And honorable senators, the next course of action is provided for under our own standing orders. If you read Standing Order 51D, it gives the option available to this House where the House feels that a CS has abstained themselves without reasonable cause. Otherwise, for how long are you going to vent your frustrations like you've done today? We have taken 2.5 hours venting our frustrations, our pain, our disgust, our disappointment. Next week on Tuesday, if CSs don't appear, we'll continue playing the tape. The other following Tuesday, if they don't appear, you will continue playing the tape. Honorable senators, that must stop. You have the sword. The sword is not with the speaker. You have the sword under Standing Order 51D. You can elect to continue lamenting, or you can draw the sword and strike. It's up to you. Let us end it there. Next order.
Order number 8, motion. Declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. Resumption of debate.
Senator Cheptumo, just approach the chair, please. This is a resumption of debate that was interrupted on Wednesday, the 28th of February, 2024. At that juncture, Senator Ledama Olekina was making his contribution in form of seconding. He had a balance of 13 minutes. He is not in the House, so I will allow Senator Fatuma Dulo to take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me make my contribution to this motion on the declaration of cattle rustling and banditry as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this motion because this is long overdue. Because of the menace that we have in the country as a result of cattle rustling, which has changed from the previous thinking that it was a cultural behavior among some certain pastoral communities. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the cattle rustling issues that are affecting many parts of this country, and I must appreciate the effort put in by the current CS Interior, CS Kithure Kindiki, in trying to stamp out the issue of cattle rustling in some areas. But I believe this is something that is continuing even with the kind of effort the government is putting in. And I believe the proposal by Senator Cheptumo that we must create a special fund is also valid, and also the proposal in declaring cattle rustling as a national disaster is also valid and very important. Mr. Speaker, if I may give an example of Isiolo County, you will see that the pattern has changed from cultural behavior to business. Because you can imagine animals actually taken today, within few hours, they find themselves in the market, which means it's a business now, the issue of cattle rustling. And I believe the government should be able to put in more effort in actually getting rid of cattle rustling, because you will find that still we have the issues of proliferation of small arms and weapons in our country. Most of the areas within where cattle rustling is happening, you will find that many people are having firearms that are not even licensed. We have made efforts as a country to make sure that all those who own firearms, they have licensed them. But unfortunately, still people have those firearms unlicensed. And there is government presence all over, even at the location level and sub-location levels in so many areas, which clearly means, Mr. Speaker, that there is a lot of laxity as far as dealing with cattle rustling in this country is important. And I think we have to be serious this time round and make sure that these issues are dealt with. Cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker, has affected also the social fabric within our communities. You will find, Mr. Speaker, that in many areas, the situation on the ground is affected. Communities' lives are affected. You will find that there is economic hardship, Mr. Speaker, where you can imagine some families, they have over 1,000 animals. Within a day, it's all swept away without any recourse. I believe this is really a very serious matter, because the issue of pastoralism and keeping animals, it's way of life and livelihood for so many people. But unfortunately, that has never happened in our country, where we feel that serious effort is put into place to make sure that the issue of cattle rustling is dealt with. Mr. Speaker, you will find that in the areas where cattle rustling is happening, there is no development at all. Because if there is a project coming up in a certain area, people will say, oh, there is insecurity there. That is the reason why we have not even completed the projects that are proposed in those areas. And I have several examples within even my own county. The areas that border Wajir, Garissa, Samburu, those areas, Mr. Speaker, and even between Isiolo and Meru, where developments are affected simply because of cattle rustling and insecurity. And that is something that actually takes people backward and brings in the issue of marginalization in this country. And we must take, Mr. Speaker, this very serious. Mr. Speaker, unemployment is also another factor that is affecting most of our youths in our country. Because you can find in a place like Isiolo, the only employment that some people can access is actually herding animals. But now, when these animals are taken away, you will find even a boy or a girl with an A, they are unable even to go to university. And if the only source of livelihood that are animals, they are taken away, and that is where they are actually getting their employment in herding, then it means these youths are actually reduced to nothing, Mr. Speaker. And this matter has to be taken very seriously. In payment of school fees, you will find that most of the pastoralists, they rely on these animals to pay their school fees for their children. Mr. Speaker, if these animals are taken away, most of our kids end up actually not even finishing their school or their schools or even getting to school, because cattle rustling is affecting our communities so much. Mr. Speaker, This is actually a matter that this country has to take very seriously. And I believe the proposal of a special fund will actually mitigate some of the factors or the challenges we get as a result of cattle rustling. Because if you have 1,000 camels and they are taken away, if there is funding or a fund that is somewhere, they can be compensated, Mr. Speaker. But without fund, that means Kenyans are really suffering, especially in those areas where cattle rustling is prone. Mr. Speaker, I believe we have a solution to this problem, if only as a country we are serious. Even in budgeting process, you will